So this is our last video, and we'll conclude the conclusion here, but what should a curriculum in entrepreneurship look like? Well, if it was really totally up to me, and it's not, I'm just an entrepreneurship educator, I'm not a university president or a dean or anything like that. But let's say it was totally up to me, how would I do it? I would actually revert to the Scandinavian model, where every class is basically a directed study with a faculty member. The student tells the faculty member what they want to learn. The faculty member composes appropriate problem statements and projects for that student. And then they give the student some suggested reading materials, some suggested ideas for projects, and then they allow the student to explore, right? And they try things, they fail things, they come back to the faculty member, they talk about what they did or didn't do correctly, what they did and didn't learn. I would use that Scandinavian model of education. However, I don't teach at a Scandinavian university. I teach at a U.S. university, and we have a specific curriculum in a business school where if you want to be an entrepreneurship major, you've got to take your business core, your accounting, your management, your finance, all that basic stuff. And I think that's good, and I think that's appropriate, right? But I also think that students should have more flexibility in what they're learning than is typically provided by a North American university. One of my other pet peeves that Hindle agrees on, I think it's one of the most dangerous things to teach strategy as a capstone course, right? The idea is that strategy kind of brings everything together at the end of your education, and they take the simulation that's available in capstone courses across the country. I think this is a real mistake. In my graduate school, strategy was actually the first course students took. And the reason was you learned how a firm worked, and that helped you understand how whatever major you thought you were going to choose would support an overall company's competitive advantage. I thought that was a very powerful and a very appropriate way to do it. But not many schools do it that way. And so, again, and the other problem with strategy as a capstone, strategy is a real discipline in its own right. I could conceivably see that there could be programs, entire majors in just strategy. There's that much on strategy out there, and I think just one course is grossly insufficient. Those of you who are taking my courses probably noticed that I spend a fair amount of time teaching you strategy because I think it's so important. Early new ventures rather, the dichotomy between entrepreneurship and strategy at the early stages of firm formation, I think is quite thin. So in order to start a venture, start a new firm, you really need to have a solid understanding of strategy, not wait till the end of your major to take a capstone course to learn it. I don't think that's helpful or constructive. So let's look just a little bit more through this article. And I think that just about wraps up most of it. As in the conclusion, I like something that Kevin Hindle says. It's on page 122. He says, as Socrates demonstrated, critical imagination resides in people, not in buildings or curricula or organization charts or even books. So the conclusion is that you need to have teachers and students performing together, just like Socrates did at the Agora, right? Asking questions, stimulating the imagination. And I think, and I like the other thing that he says, when every teacher should be having this kind of mantra, when you don't see yourself or your students succeeding, you have to say this. I like that. It's the teacher, stupid. The fundamental precept of a great entrepreneurship education program is to have a passionate teacher who addresses students passionately, imaginatively, and creatively so that those students can be just as passionate about entrepreneurship as they are. Okay? And I like how Whitehead says this. It should be the chief aim of a university professor to exhibit himself or herself in his own true character as an ignorant man thinking. Again, I repeat that again. We want to get you jazzed up and excited. And then the final thing that he says, thinking of jazzed up, that Hindle says, is that, it's almost like an entrepreneurship educator should be like a jazz musician or the leader of a jazz band. Someone who is able to kind of set the rhythm or set the tone and get the other jazz musicians to play along in a way that's coherent and beautiful. So here are some questions that I want you guys to think about and post them in the comments. And these are questions on page 124. Is an apprenticeship a purely vocational concept, or does it have transcendent aspects? Why or why not? Could some kind of apprenticeship be offered in a context rather than an operating business, perhaps even at a university? A university apprenticeship, how about that? Could different kinds of apprenticeships provide valuable diversity in an individual's entrepreneurship education? What are the strengths and weaknesses of apprenticeship versus other methods of teaching any subject matter in general and entrepreneurship in particular? Could an apprenticeship be approximated or simulated? So in my case, for my entrepreneurship majors, you notice you can either start your own entrepreneurial firm, you can work in an entrepreneurial firm, and those of you that are interested in entrepreneurship's plus zone challenge aspects but don't actually want to be entrepreneurs, I allow you to write a research paper on entrepreneurship as your apprenticeship. So you get a choice. What do you guys think about that approach? Is the culture of the business school an immutable constant, or could business schools be induced to adapt and diversify their educational approaches to suit different subject matter and different student needs using approaches different than those that currently prevail? So there are some questions, some food for thought for you. I hope you've enjoyed this entire video series, so make sure you comment below on the prompts. If you like this video or any part of it, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next series. Thanks again for sticking with me on this video playlist.